The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the aisles of Morrison's grocery store in East Nashville, Tennessee. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Jennifer Collins pushed a shopping cart through the produce section, followed by a small group of children from Oak Ridge Children's Home. It was Thursday, the day she took the kids on their weekly grocery run, a mundane task that gave them a brief escape from the institutional walls they called home. Timothy Hayes trailed behind the group, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his worn jeans. At 11 years old, Timmy had learned to make himself small, to occupy as little space as possible in a world that seemed to have forgotten him. His sandy brown hair fell across his forehead, partially hiding the freckles that dotted his pale skin. 2 years had passed since the car accident that took his parents. 2 years since his life had been turned upside down and scattered like puzzle pieces that no one seemed interested in putting back together. Jennifer's voice cut through his thoughts. "Timmy, stay with the group, honey. We're almost done." He nodded without looking up, his sneakers squeaking against the polished linoleum floor. The store was busy for a Thursday evening. Working parents rushing in after picking up their kids from school, elderly couples taking their time selecting fresh vegetables, teenagers grabbing snacks and energy drinks. Timmy watched them all with a detached curiosity, wondering what it felt like to belong to someone, to have a place to call home that wasn't shared with 15 other kids and a rotating staff of well-meaning but exhausted caregivers. As the group moved toward the checkout lanes, something caught Timmy's attention. Through a set of swinging doors marked "Employees Only," he could see into the bakery section. Patricia Brennan, the store's bakery manager, was loading day-old cakes and pastries into large plastic bins. He knew what those bins meant. The items would either be donated to a food bank or simply thrown away. The store policy was clear. Nothing could be sold the day after it was made. Timmy's birthday was in 3 days, December 3rd. He would turn 12, though he doubted anyone at the home would remember. Last year, Jennifer had tried to organize a small celebration, but there had been an emergency with another child, and his birthday had been forgotten in the chaos. The year before, he'd spent his birthday in a different facility, one where the staff barely learned the children's names, let alone remembered their birthdays. An idea formed in his mind, desperate, embarrassing, but persistent. Before he could talk himself out of it, Timmy broke away from the group and approached the bakery counter. His heart hammered against his ribs as he waited for Patricia to notice him. She was a heavy-set woman in her 50s, with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun, and kind eyes that had seen too many years of retail work. "Can I help you, sweetie?" Patricia asked, wiping her flour-dusted hands on her apron. Timmy's throat felt tight. He could feel the heat rising to his cheeks, but he forced himself to speak. Those cakes you're throwing away? Would you have an old cake for my birthday? It's in 3 days, and I just thought, maybe if you were going to throw it away anyway." The words came out in a rush, barely coherent. He couldn't bring himself to meet Patricia's eyes, couldn't bear to see pity or rejection reflected there. The silence that followed felt eternal, though it lasted only seconds. Patricia's expression softened. "Oh, honey, when's your birthday?" "December 3rd. I'll be 12. Timmy's voice was barely above a whisper. What Timmy didn't know was that his question had been overheard. Standing 2 aisles away, partially hidden behind a display of canned goods, was someone who had stopped in her tracks at the sound of his words. Reba McEntire had been shopping quietly, wearing a simple baseball cap and sunglasses, grateful for a rare moment of anonymity in her hometown. She'd been reaching for a can of soup when the boy's voice, small, hopeful, and heartbreaking, had carried across the store. Reba was no stranger to hardship. Growing up in rural Oklahoma, she'd known what it meant to make do with less, to stretch every dollar, to find joy in simple things. But there was something about the raw vulnerability in this child's request that struck her directly in the heart. A boy asking for a discarded cake, not because he was ungrateful, but because he believed that was all he deserved. She watched as Patricia knelt down to the boy's level, her professional demeanor giving way to genuine compassion. "Tell you what, sweetheart, how about I make sure we save you a nice cake? What's your favorite flavor?" Timmy's head snapped up, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Really? You do that?" "Of course. Every birthday deserves a cake." Reba made a decision in that moment. She abandoned her shopping cart and walked purposefully toward the bakery counter. Patricia looked up as the country music legend approached, recognition flickering across her face despite the disguise. Reba placed a gentle hand on Timmy's shoulder, causing him to turn around in surprise. "Excuse me," Reba said, her voice warm and measured. "I couldn't help but overhear. I'm wondering if I might have the honor of buying this young man a fresh birthday cake, not an old one. And maybe we could arrange a proper celebration?" Timmy stared at her, his mouth slightly open. Even in her casual clothes and baseball cap, there was something familiar about the woman, though he couldn't quite place it. Her presence commanded attention in a way that had nothing to do with fame and everything to do with genuine kindness radiating from her. I can't accept," Timmy stammered, confusion and hope warring on his face. "You can, and you will," Reba said firmly but gently. "Every child deserves to feel special on their birthday. Now, what's your name?" "Timothy. Timothy Hayes. But everyone calls me Timmy." "Well, Timmy, I'm Reba, and I think you and I need to have a conversation about birthday cakes and maybe a few other things." Jennifer Collins appeared at Timmy's side, her expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. She'd noticed his absence from the group and had come looking for him. Recognition dawned on her face as she took in the scene. Patricia Brennan looking emotional, Timmy looking shell-shocked, and Reba McEntire standing there with a determined expression that Jennifer had seen before in photographs and on television. "I'm Jennifer Collins," she introduced herself, extending her hand. "I'm the coordinator at Oak Ridge Children's Home. Timmy is one of our residents." Reba shook her hand firmly. "Ms. Collins, would you mind if I spoke with Timmy for a few minutes? I promise we won't go far. Maybe just to the coffee shop next door. I'd like to learn more about his situation and see if there's a way I can help make his birthday special." Jennifer hesitated. Protocol dictated caution, background checks, proper procedures. But she also recognized an opportunity when she saw one. Oak Ridge was underfunded and overwhelmed, and the children under her care received so little individual attention. If Reba McEntire wanted to make one child's birthday special, who was she to stand in the way? "I'll need to stay with him," Jennifer said carefully. "But yes, I think that would be fine. Timmy, would you like that?" Timmy nodded slowly, still processing what was happening. Part of him wondered if this was a dream, if he'd wake up in his narrow bed at the home to find that none of this had been real. But Reba's hand on his shoulder felt solid and warm, and the kindness in her eyes seemed genuine. "Let me settle up here first," Reba said to Patricia. "Can we arrange for a custom cake for December 3rd? Something really special. And please, don't worry about the cost." Patricia nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. She'd worked retail for 30 years and had seen countless moments of human kindness. But this was something extraordinary. "I'll take care of it personally." "What do you think, Timmy? Chocolate? Vanilla? Maybe red velvet?" "Chocolate," Timmy whispered. "With white frosting, if that's okay." "Chocolate with white frosting it is," Patricia confirmed, writing a note to herself. "And I'll make it beautiful." I promise." 10 minutes later, Timmy found himself sitting in a booth at the small coffee shop adjacent to Morrison's grocery store. Jennifer sat beside him, while Reba sat across from them, 3 cups of hot chocolate steaming on the table between them. The coffee shop was nearly empty at this hour, just a few college students hunched over laptops in the corner and an elderly man reading a newspaper by the window. Reba removed her baseball cap and sunglasses, running a hand through her auburn hair. Without the disguise, there was no mistaking who she was. The college students looked up, recognition sparking, but something about the serious nature of the conversation kept them from approaching. "Timmy," Reba began, her voice gentle but direct, "I want you to know that what you did back there, asking for that cake, that took real courage. You shouldn't be ashamed of it. Not for 1 second." Timmy looked down at his hot chocolate, watching the marshmallows slowly melt into white swirls. "It was stupid. I shouldn't have asked." "It wasn't stupid at all," Jennifer interjected. "Timmy, you have nothing to be embarrassed about." "Tell me about yourself," Reba encouraged. "Where are you from? How did you end up at Oak Ridge?" The story came out slowly at first, then faster as Timmy found his voice. He told them about his parents, his father, Robert Hayes, who had been a mechanic, and his mother, Linda Hayes, who had worked as a receptionist at a dental office. He described the accident, though his memories of it were fragmented and nightmarish. A winter night, black ice on the highway, headlights, and then nothing. He'd been at a friend's house when the police came to tell him his parents were gone. "I have a sister," Timmy said, his voice breaking slightly. "Rebecca. She's 15. We were placed together at first, but then they said the facility couldn't keep both of us. She got moved to a group home in Clarksville about 8 months ago. I haven't seen her since." Reba felt her heart constrict. She'd heard stories like this before. Siblings separated by a system that was well-intentioned but chronically overwhelmed and underfunded. She glanced at Jennifer, who looked pained but unsurprised. "We tried to keep them together," Jennifer explained quietly. "But Rebecca was having behavioral issues. Nothing serious, just acting out, pushing boundaries. And we didn't have the resources to provide the level of support she needed. The facility in Clarksville specializes in teenage girls and has better staffing ratios. It was supposed to be temporary, but nothing is ever temporary in the system," Reba finished, her tone understanding rather than accusatory. Jennifer nodded. "We're trying to arrange visits, but it's complicated. Different counties, different systems, budget constraints. Timmy talks to her on the phone once a week, but it's not the same." Timmy blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. "I miss her so much. She used to help me with homework and make me laugh when I was sad. She promised we'd stay together. But then they took her away, and nobody asked me what I wanted." Reba reached across the table and took Timmy's hand. Her grip was firm and reassuring. "I'm going to be honest with you, Timmy. I can't fix everything. I can't make promises I can't keep. But I can promise you this. You're going to have the best birthday celebration we can possibly arrange. And I'm going to look into what can be done about getting you and your sister together, even if it's just for a visit. Would you like that?" Timmy looked up at her, tears streaming down his cheeks now, all pretense of toughness abandoned. "Yes, please. I just want to see her. I just want my sister." "Then that's what we're going to work on," Reba said with determination. She looked at Jennifer. "I'll need to understand the system better. What's possible? What's realistic? I have some resources, some connections. Maybe we can make something happen." Jennifer looked cautious but hopeful. "I'd be grateful for any help. These kids, they deserve so much more than what we're able to give them. Timmy is a good kid, smart, kind, never causes trouble. But he's been so withdrawn since Rebecca left. This is the first time in months I've seen him show real emotion about anything. They talked for another half hour, Reba asking questions and Jennifer providing answers about the realities of the foster care system, the challenges of reunification, the bureaucratic hurdles that turned simple requests into months-long ordeals. Timmy sat quietly, sipping his hot chocolate, hardly daring to hope that this encounter might lead to something more than just a birthday cake. Finally, as the sky outside darkened to full night, Reba stood up. "I need to make some calls. Ms. Collins, would it be possible for me to visit Oak Ridge tomorrow? I'd like to see the facility and maybe talk to some of the other staff members about Timmy's case." "Of course," Jennifer said, pulling out a business card. "Here's the address and my direct number. We'd be honored to have you visit." Reba turned to Timmy, who was looking at her with an expression of wonder mixed with disbelief. "Timmy, I want you to do something for me. I want you to believe that you matter, that your birthday matters, that your happiness matters. Can you try to do that?" Timmy nodded, not trusting himself to speak. "Good. I'll see you tomorrow. And Timmy, thank you for asking for that cake. You reminded me why I do what I do, why any of us should use whatever influence we have to make a difference. You're a brave kid." As Reba left the coffee shop, pulling her baseball cap back on and slipping her sunglasses into her pocket, she pulled out her phone. There were calls to make, favors to call in, wheels to set in motion. She'd meant every word she'd said to Timmy. That little boy with the heartbreaking question had touched something deep inside her. And Reba McEntire was not a woman who made promises lightly. Behind her, Timmy watched through the window as she walked to her car. For the first time in 2 years, he felt something he'd almost forgotten: hope. The morning sun struggled to break through the gray December clouds as Reba's silver SUV pulled up to the Oak Ridge Children's Home. The facility was located in a quiet residential neighborhood, a 2-story brick building that had once been a school before being converted to its current purpose. The lawn was neatly maintained, and someone had hung a string of cheerful lights along the porch railing in anticipation of the holidays. But no amount of decoration could hide the institutional nature of the place. Reba sat in her car for a moment, gathering her thoughts. She'd spent the previous evening making calls, reaching out to lawyers, social workers she'd worked with through her charitable foundation, and even a state senator she'd met at a benefit concert. Everyone had been willing to help, but they'd all cautioned her that the system moved slowly and that raising her expectations, or worse, Timmy's expectations, could lead to disappointment. But Reba hadn't built a 4-decade career in country music by accepting limitations. She grabbed her purse and stepped out of the vehicle, her boots crunching on the gravel parking lot. Jennifer Collins met her at the front door, looking tired but welcoming. "Ms. McEntire, thank you so much for coming. I wasn't sure you'd actually follow through." "Please, call me Reba," she said warmly. "And I always follow through on my word." "Is Timmy here?" "He's in class right now. We have a teacher who comes in for a few hours each day to work with the younger children. But he knows you're coming. He barely slept last night, according to the overnight staff." Jennifer led Reba through the facility, pointing out the common areas, the small library stocked with donated books, the kitchen where the children took turns helping prepare meals. Everything was clean and orderly, but there was an unmistakable air of impermanence to the place. This was not a home. It was a way station where children waited for something better that might never come. "We have 17 children currently," Jennifer explained as they walked. "Ages range from 6 to 16. Some are here because of abuse or neglect, others because of parental incarceration or death. We do our best, but we're understaffed and underfunded. Most of our counselors are part-time, and we rely heavily on volunteers." They entered Jennifer's small office, where files were stacked high on the desk, and a calendar on the wall showed multiple appointments and court dates. Jennifer gestured for Reba to sit in one of the two chairs facing the desk. "I want to be honest with you about Timmy's situation," Jennifer began, pulling out a thick file. "His case is complicated, though not unusual. After his parents died, there were no immediate family members willing or able to take custody. His father was an only child, and his mother had a sister in Arizona, but she's dealing with her own health issues and felt she couldn't handle two children, especially a teenager like Rebecca, who was already showing signs of trauma response. So they've been in the system for 2 years," Reba said, her jaw tight. "Yes, Rebecca, as I mentioned, is currently at Bridgewater Home for Girls in Clarksville. It's about an hour from here. She's been doing better there. They have more resources for therapeutic intervention. But the separation from Timmy has been hard on both of them. What would it take to arrange a visit?" Reba asked directly. Jennifer sighed. "Normally, we'd need to coordinate with Bridgewater, get approval from both facilities, and from the children's caseworker. That's Daniel Foster. He'll be here this afternoon. Then we'd need to arrange transportation, supervision, and make sure it doesn't interfere with either child's school schedule or therapy appointments. It's a lot of moving parts. But it's possible. It's possible. Just slow. The system is designed to be cautious, to protect the children. But sometimes, that caution becomes an obstacle." Reba leaned forward. "What if I provided the transportation? What if I arranged for the visit to take place in a neutral, supervised location? Would that speed things up?" Jennifer looked surprised. "You'd be willing to do that?" "I'm willing to do whatever it takes within the bounds of what's legal and appropriate," Reba said firmly. "These are two kids who've already lost their parents. They shouldn't lose each other, too." A knock on the door interrupted them. Jennifer called out, "Come in," and Timmy entered hesitantly. He was wearing jeans and a faded Nashville Predators t-shirt, his hair still damp from a morning shower. When he saw Reba, his face lit up with a smile so genuine and unexpected that it nearly brought tears to her eyes. "Hi, Timmy," Reba said, standing up and opening her arms. Timmy didn't hesitate. He crossed the room and hugged her tightly, as if she were a lifeline he'd been waiting for. "You really came," he whispered into her shoulder. "I told you I would. I don't break promises." She held him for a moment before stepping back to look at him. "How are you feeling today?" "Better. Scared that this isn't real, but better. It's real, I promise. Now, I have an idea I want to run past you and Ms. Collins. How would you feel about having your birthday party here at Oak Ridge? Not just for you, but for all the kids. A real celebration with cake, music, games, the works. And I'd like to try to get Rebecca here for it. No promises on that last part, because I need to work through some channels. But I'm going to try my hardest." Timmy's eyes widened. "Rebecca? Here? For my birthday? That's the plan. Again, I can't guarantee it. But I'm going to do everything in my power to make it happen." Timmy looked at Jennifer, who smiled and nodded. "If Reba can arrange it, we'll make it work on our end." "But why?" Timmy asked, his voice small. "Why are you doing all this for me? You don't even know me." Reba knelt down so she was at eye level with him. "Because every child deserves to know they matter. Because I remember what it was like to struggle, to feel like the world had forgotten about me. And because yesterday, when you asked for that old cake, you reminded me that sometimes the smallest gesture can mean everything. You deserve more than an old cake, Timmy. You deserve the world." Timmy's eyes filled with tears, but he was smiling through them. "Thank you. I don't know what else to say except thank you. That's more than enough. Now, I have work to do. But first, can you introduce me to some of the other kids?" I'd like to get to know them too. The next few hours were a whirlwind. Timmy led Reba through the facility, introducing her to the other residents. There was Emma Rodriguez, a shy 7-year-old who hid behind Timmy's leg when she first met Reba. Caleb Johnson, a boisterous 9-year-old who immediately asked if Reba knew any songs about trucks. And Ashley Peterson, a quiet 13-year-old who watched everything with careful, guarded eyes. Reba spent time with each of them, asking about their interests, their dreams, their favorite subjects in school. She listened more than she talked, and her genuine interest broke through even the most protective walls. By lunchtime, the children were chattering excitedly about the upcoming party, already making requests for games and food. That afternoon, Daniel Foster arrived at Oak Ridge for his scheduled check-in with Timmy and several other children under his supervision. Daniel was in his early 40s, with graying temples and kind eyes that had seen too much suffering but refused to become hardened by it. He'd been a social worker for 15 years, and while the job had its moments of heartbreak, it also had moments of profound reward. Jennifer introduced him to Reba in her office, explaining the situation. Daniel listened carefully, his expression thoughtful. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, Ms. McEntire," he said once Jennifer had finished. "And I want to help. But I need to be clear about the challenges. Rebecca's case is being handled by a different county, which means coordination between multiple agencies. Her behavioral issues earlier this year, while resolved now, are still in her file, which means any visit will need to be carefully supervised. And we need to be mindful of both children's emotional states. A visit that ends badly could set back progress they've both made." "I understand all of that," Reba said patiently. "What do you need from me to make this happen?" Daniel pulled out his phone and began scrolling through his contacts. "Let me reach out to Rebecca's caseworker, Michelle Torres. She's reasonable and she cares about her kids. If I explain the situation, and you're willing to provide resources, transportation, a neutral location with appropriate supervision, we might be able to fast-track this. Consider it done, whatever you need." Daniel made the call right there in Jennifer's office, putting it on speaker. Michelle Torres answered on the third ring, her voice brisk but not unfriendly. After Daniel explained the situation, there was a long pause. "Daniel, you're asking me to move mountains here. I have protocols, approvals I need to get, liability concerns." "I know, Michelle. But these are two kids who've been through hell. They've lost their parents. They've been separated from each other. And they're both struggling. A birthday visit isn't going to solve all their problems, but it might give them hope. And hope matters." Another pause. Then Michelle sighed. "Who did you say was offering to help coordinate this?" Daniel glanced at Reba. "Reba McEntire." "Yes, that Reba McEntire. She met Timmy yesterday and wants to help." "You're kidding." "I'm not. She's here right now." Reba leaned toward the phone. "Ms. Torres, I'm happy to answer any questions or concerns you might have. I want to do this right, within all proper guidelines. I just want to help these kids see each other." Michelle's tone softened. "Okay, here's what I can do. I need to clear it with my supervisor and with the director at Bridgewater, but if they approve, we could arrange a supervised visit for December 3rd. That's Timmy's birthday, correct? It would need to be in a neutral location, with appropriate supervision, and it would be limited to a few hours. Rebecca has been doing well lately, and honestly, she asks about her brother in almost every session with her therapist. I think this could be therapeutic for both of them." "What about transportation?" Daniel asked. "If Ms. McEntire is willing to provide a vehicle and a driver, that would solve one of our biggest obstacles. We can send a staff member from Bridgewater to accompany Rebecca." "Done," Reba said immediately. "I'll arrange for a car service and cover all expenses. Just tell me what you need." They spent another 20 minutes working out the details. The visit would take place at Oak Ridge during the birthday party, from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. A staff member from Bridgewater and Daniel Foster would both be present to supervise. Reba would arrange and pay for professional transportation for Rebecca. Michelle would begin the approval process immediately and would call back by the end of the day with a final answer. When the call ended, Daniel looked at Reba with newfound respect. You just accomplished in one afternoon what would normally take weeks or months. How did you know which buttons to push? Reba smiled. I didn't. I just asked people to remember why they got into this work in the first place, to help kids. Sometimes all it takes is someone reminding everyone of the goal instead of the obstacles. That evening, as Reba drove home to her ranch on the outskirts of Nashville, her phone rang. It was Michelle Torres. Ms. McEntire, I wanted to let you know that we got all the approvals. Rebecca can attend the party on December 3rd. I spoke with her about an hour ago to tell her and, well, she cried. In a good way. She's so excited to see her brother. Reba felt her own eyes water. That's wonderful news. Thank you for making this happen. Thank you. You have no idea how rare moments like this are in our line of work. Usually we're dealing with crisis management and damage control. Getting to facilitate something joyful, it reminds me why I became a social worker. After hanging up, Reba sat in her driveway for a few minutes, letting the emotions wash over her. She thought about her own family, her own children and grandchildren, and how fortunate she was. She thought about Timmy and Rebecca, two kids who deserved the world but had been given so little. Tomorrow, she would call Timmy to give him the news. Tonight, she would enjoy the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes, even in a system bogged down by bureaucracy and limitations, persistence and compassion could create small miracles. The next morning arrived cold and crisp, with frost painting intricate patterns on the windows of Oak Ridge Children's Home. Timmy woke before his alarm, as he had for the past 2 nights, his mind racing with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. In his 11 years, he'd learned that hope was a dangerous thing. It made you vulnerable, opened you up to disappointment. But despite his better judgment, hope had taken root in his chest and was growing steadily. Jennifer had told him last night that Reba would be calling with news this morning. As he dressed for breakfast, pulling on his favorite hoodie, a dark blue one that had belonged to his father, Timmy tried to prepare himself for both possibilities. If the visit with Rebecca was approved, it would be the best birthday he'd had since his parents died. If it wasn't, well, he'd lived through worse disappointments. In the common room, several of the other kids were already gathered around the television, watching cartoons. Ashley Peterson sat alone by the window with a book, though Timmy noticed she wasn't turning any pages. He'd learned that Ashley had been at Oak Ridge for almost a year, surrendered by a mother who couldn't afford to feed 3 children on her own. Ashley rarely talked about her family, but sometimes Timmy caught her staring out windows with an expression of longing that he recognized in his own mirror. "Morning, Timmy," called Caleb Johnson, bouncing over with his usual endless energy. "Is today the day? Are we finding out about your sister?" News had spread quickly through the home about Reba's visit and her plans for the birthday party. The other children were almost as excited as Timmy. A real celebrity coming to celebrate with them, with cake and games and music. For kids who'd experienced so little joy, the anticipation was almost overwhelming. "I think so," Timmy replied, trying to sound calmer than he felt. Emma Rodriguez appeared at his elbow, clutching a stuffed rabbit that went everywhere with her. "Will your sister like me?" she asked in her small voice. Timmy smiled and crouched down to her level. "She's going to love you, Emma. Rebecca loves kids." The truth was, Timmy wasn't entirely sure how Rebecca was doing. Their weekly phone calls were supervised and brief, and his sister always seemed to be holding back, as if she didn't want to worry him. She asked about his schoolwork, made jokes, told him she was fine. But Timmy could hear something underneath her words, a sadness that mirrored his own. Jennifer entered the common room, her cell phone in hand, and a smile on her face. "Timmy, can I see you in my office for a minute?" His heart jumped. The other kids watched with obvious curiosity as he followed Jennifer down the hallway. In her office, she handed him the phone. "It's Reba. She has news for you." Timmy took the phone with trembling hands. "Hello? Good morning, birthday boy." Reba's warm voice came through the speaker. "Well, almost birthday boy. 2 more days. I have some good news. Your sister is approved to visit on December 3rd. She'll be here from 2 to 5 p.m. For a moment, Timmy couldn't speak. The relief and joy were so intense, they almost hurt. "Really? She's really coming?" "Really and truly. I know it's been months since you've seen each other. Are you ready for that?" "Yes, God, yes. Can I talk to her before then? I've arranged for you to have an extra phone call tonight. A longer one, without time restrictions. Daniel Foster will supervise, but he'll give you privacy. You can tell her how excited you are, and you can catch up properly." Timmy wiped at his eyes with his free hand. "I don't know how to thank you. This is everything. You don't need to thank me, honey. Just be ready to enjoy your birthday. And Timmy, I need you to help me with something. I want this party to be special for all the kids, not just you. Can you help me figure out what would make everyone happy?" "Like what?" "Well, I know about the cake, and I'm bringing some decorations. But what about games? Music? Is there anything specific the kids at Oak Ridge would really enjoy?" Timmy thought for a moment. Emma loves face painting, and Caleb is obsessed with superheroes. Ashley doesn't like loud things, but she loves art. And there are a couple of kids who have birthdays in December, too. Michael turned 14 last week, and Grace will be 9 next week. Maybe we could celebrate them, too. "That's perfect. I'm writing all this down. What about food? Pizza? Burgers?" Pizza is everyone's favorite. And maybe, if it's not too much, could we have those little individual ice cream cups? We never get those, and they make everything feel special. Reba's laugh was warm. "Ice cream cups it is. Okay, Timmy. I have a lot of planning to do. You focus on getting through the next 2 days, and I'll handle the rest. Give the phone back to Ms. Collins for me." Timmy handed the phone to Jennifer, who spoke briefly with Reba about logistics before hanging up. When she turned to Timmy, her eyes were suspiciously bright. "You know what, kiddo? I've been doing this job for 10 years, and I've never seen anything quite like this. You're a lucky boy." "I know," Timmy whispered. For the first time in years, he actually felt lucky. The next 2 days passed in a blur of anticipation. Reba called several more times, coordinating with Jennifer and Daniel, making sure every detail was perfect. She'd enlisted the help of her management team, who arranged for professional decorators to come to Oak Ridge the morning of December 3rd. She'd also contacted a local children's entertainer who specialized in face painting and balloon animals. Meanwhile, in Clarksville, Rebecca Hayes was experiencing her own emotional whirlwind. When Michelle Torres had told her about the approved visit, Rebecca had broken down in tears. A rare display of emotion for a 15-year-old who'd learned to keep her feelings locked tightly away. The separation from Timmy had been one of the hardest things she'd ever endured, made worse by the guilt she carried for being moved to Bridgewater. She knew, logically, that it wasn't her fault, but logic didn't ease the ache of feeling like she'd abandoned her little brother. On the evening of December 2nd, Timmy had his extended phone call with Rebecca. Daniel Foster set him up in Jennifer's office with the door closed, giving them as much privacy as possible while remaining within earshot as required by protocol. "Timmy?" Rebecca's voice cracked when she heard her brother on the line. "Becca, hi." "Pete." Timmy used her childhood nickname, the one only he was allowed to use. "I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe I get to see you tomorrow." "I know. I've been counting down the hours." They talked for nearly 40 minutes, catching up on all the things their brief supervised calls never covered. Rebecca told him about Bridgewater, about her therapist, Dr. Williams, about the other girls in the home who'd become something like friends. Timmy told her about the kids at Oak Ridge, about his classes, about the nightmares he still had sometimes about the accident. "I'm sorry I wasn't there for you," Rebecca said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm your big sister. I'm supposed to protect you. And instead, you've been dealing with everything alone. It's not your fault, Becca. None of this is your fault. We're both just trying to survive. Tell me about this woman, this singer who's helping you." Timmy described his encounter with Reba, the question about the cake, the coffee shop conversation, everything that had happened since. Rebecca listened with wonder. "She sounds amazing. I can't wait to meet her. And Timmy, happy early birthday. I'm bringing you a present tomorrow. You don't have to. I want to. I made you something. It's not much, but I think you'll like it." When they finally said goodbye, both siblings were crying, but they were good tears. Tears of relief and anticipation. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. That night, Timmy lay in his narrow bed at Oak Ridge, listening to the sounds of the other boys in his room settling down to sleep. Across the small dormitory-style room, Caleb was already snoring softly. Another boy, Preston Wallace, a 10-year-old who'd been at the home for 6 months, was reading by flashlight under his covers. Timmy stared at the ceiling, where someone had stuck glow-in-the-dark stars years ago. Several were missing now, leaving gaps in the constellations. He thought about his parents, wondering if they knew somehow that tomorrow he would see Rebecca. He liked to imagine they were watching over both of them, proud of how they were surviving impossible circumstances. He thought about Reba and her inexplicable kindness. She owed him nothing, yet she'd moved heaven and earth to make his birthday special, to reunite him with his sister, even if only for a few hours. Timmy didn't fully understand why, what he'd done to deserve such attention, but he was grateful beyond words. Tomorrow would be December 3rd. He would turn 12 years old. He would see his sister for the first time in 8 months. And he would have a birthday party with cake and friends and someone who cared enough to make it all happen. As sleep finally claimed him, Timmy wore a small smile. Hope, it turned out, might be dangerous. But it was also powerful. And right now, it was the most precious thing he possessed. December 3rd dawned clear and cold. The kind of winter day where the sky was so blue it almost hurt to look at it. Timmy woke at 6 a.m., far too early for any reasonable 12-year-old, but sleep was impossible. Today was the day. The transformation of Oak Ridge Children's Home began at 8 a.m., when a van pulled up containing Reba's decorating team. Jennifer had cleared the common room and dining area, pushing furniture against the walls to create an open space. Over the next 3 hours, the institutional space was transformed into a winter wonderland of blue and silver streamers, balloon arches, and a large banner that read, "Happy Birthday, Timmy, Michael, and Grace." Reba arrived at 11, her SUV packed with supplies. She wore jeans, boots, and a cheerful red sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She'd brought along 2 of her band members, Jake Whitman on guitar and Laura Chen, who handled vocals, to provide live music for the party. Timmy watched the preparations with mounting excitement and disbelief. The common room looked nothing like its usual Spartan self. There was a table set up for face painting, another for arts and crafts, and a third displaying the most elaborate birthday cake he'd ever seen. Patricia Brennan had outdone herself. The cake was 3 layers of chocolate with white buttercream frosting, decorated with intricate piping and topped with 12 candles. Next to it were 2 smaller cakes, one for Michael and one for Grace, each personalized with their names. "Do you like it?" Reba asked, coming up beside Timmy as he stared at the cake. "It's perfect. It's more than perfect. I don't even have words." She put an arm around his shoulders. "Good. Now, Rebecca is scheduled to arrive at 2 p.m. That gives us time to get the party started with everyone else. And then, when she arrives, you two can have some time together before we do cake and presents. Sound good?" Timmy nodded, not trusting himself to speak without crying. The party officially began at 1 p.m. The 17 children of Oak Ridge, along with several staff members, gathered in the transformed common room. Reba had arranged for pizza to be delivered, 8 large pizzas with various toppings, along with drinks, chips, and those individual ice cream cups Timmy had requested. The face painter, a cheerful woman named Diana Morris, set up her station and was immediately swarmed by eager children. Emma requested a butterfly. Caleb demanded a Spider-Man design. And even Ashley, the normally reserved 13-year-old, asked for a simple flower on her cheek. Jake and Laura performed acoustic versions of popular songs, taking requests from the kids. When Reba joined them for an impromptu performance of one of her hits, the children went wild, clapping and singing along. For a few hours, the walls of Oak Ridge rang with genuine laughter and joy, sounds that were far too rare in that place. At precisely 2 p.m., a black sedan pulled up to the front of Oak Ridge. Timmy, who'd been watching the window obsessively for the past 20 minutes, saw it immediately. His heart began to race. "She's here," he said, his voice barely audible over the party noise. Reba touched his shoulder. "Go ahead. I'll make sure you have some time alone together." Timmy practically ran to the front door, with Jennifer following at a more measured pace. The car door opened, and Rebecca Hayes stepped out. 8 months had changed her. She'd grown taller, her dark hair now reaching past her shoulders instead of the short cut she'd had before. She wore jeans and a purple hoodie, and her face, so similar to Timmy's with the same freckles and blue-gray eyes, was a mixture of excitement and nervousness. For a moment, the siblings just stared at each other. Then Rebecca opened her arms, and Timmy rushed into them, hugging her so tightly he could barely breathe. Rebecca held him just as fiercely, her face buried in his hair. "Hey, little brother," she whispered. "Happy birthday. You're really here. You're really here. I'm really here." They stood there for a long moment, unwilling to let go, making up for 8 months of separation. Finally, they separated enough to look at each other properly. Rebecca's eyes were red, but she was smiling. "You grew," she observed. "You're almost as tall as me now." "I'm going to be taller than you by next year," Timmy said, his voice full of playful confidence he hadn't shown in months. A woman had emerged from the car with Rebecca, Amy Patterson, a staff member from Bridgewater, who would be supervising the visit. She introduced herself to Jennifer and Daniel, who'd come to the door as well, and they briefly discussed the parameters of the visit. "Why don't you two go to Jennifer's office for a bit?" Daniel suggested. "You can have some private time to catch up before joining the party." Rebecca and Timmy didn't need to be told twice. They walked together to the office, hands clasped tightly, neither willing to let go of physical contact. Once inside with the door closed, though Daniel and Amy remained just outside, they sat together on the small couch Jennifer kept for difficult conversations. "Tell me everything," Rebecca demanded. "The phone calls aren't enough. I need to know how you really are." Timmy told her the truth, about the loneliness, the nightmares, the feeling of being adrift. But he also told her about the past few days, about meeting Reba, about the unexpected kindness that had changed everything. "I want to meet her," Rebecca said. "I want to thank her for doing this." "You will. But first, I need to tell you something. I was so scared that you'd forgotten about me, that you had a new life in Clarksville and didn't need me anymore." Rebecca grabbed both of his hands. "Timmy, no. God, no. I think about you every single day. You're my brother. Nothing will ever change that. The separation is temporary. We just have to be patient." "How much longer?" Rebecca's expression faltered. "I don't know. Michelle, my caseworker, says that when I turn 18, I can potentially petition for guardianship of you. That's 3 years away, but it's a plan, something to work toward." 3 years felt like an eternity to Timmy, but it was better than no plan at all. "What's Bridgewater like? Are they treating you okay?" "It's better than I expected," Rebecca admitted. "The rules are strict, but the staff actually care. I have a therapist, Dr. Williams, who's been helping me process everything. The anger, the grief, the guilt. It's hard work, but I'm getting better. I'm not the mess I was 8 months ago." "You were never a mess, Becca." "I was, though. I was so angry at the world, at Mom and Dad for leaving us, at the system for separating us. I took it out on everyone around me. That's why they moved me. Not because I was bad, but because I needed more help than Oak Ridge could give me. I understand that now." They talked for another 30 minutes, catching up on 8 months of life. Rebecca told him about the friends she'd made at Bridgewater, girls who understood what it was like to be in the system, who'd lived through their own traumas. Timmy told her about the kids at Oak Ridge, about how he'd been trying to help Emma adjust since she'd arrived a few months ago. Finally, there was a gentle knock on the door. Jennifer poked her head in. "I hate to interrupt, but the other kids are really excited to meet Rebecca. And we're ready to do cake and presents soon." Rebecca squeezed Timmy's hand. "Ready to introduce me to your friends?" "More than ready." When they entered the common room together, the party fell silent for a moment as everyone took in the sight of the siblings together. Then Caleb broke the silence with his usual enthusiasm. "You must be Timmy's sister. Are you staying? Can you play games with us?" Rebecca laughed, a genuine, joyful sound that Timmy hadn't heard in far too long. "I can stay for a little while. And yes, I'd love to play games." The children swarmed her with questions and requests. Rebecca took it all in stride, her natural warmth breaking through even Ashley's protective walls. She got her face painted, a small star on her cheekbone, and helped Emma make a balloon animal. She played musical chairs and freeze dance, throwing herself into the party with abandon. Reba watched from the side, a satisfied smile on her face. When she caught Timmy's eye, she winked at him. This, seeing the siblings together, seeing genuine happiness on their faces, was why she'd made this happen. At 3:30, Jennifer announced it was time for cake and presents. The children gathered around the tables where the 3 cakes sat. Timmy, Michael, and Grace stood together as everyone sang Happy Birthday, with Jake and Laura providing musical accompaniment. When it came time to blow out the candles, Timmy closed his eyes and made a wish. "Let this not be the last time I see Rebecca." The cake was delicious, moist and rich. Everything Timmy had imagined and more. He ate his slice slowly, wanting to savor every bite, to remember this moment forever. Then came presents. Reba had arranged for small gifts for each of the birthday children. For Timmy, a new sketchbook and a set of high-quality colored pencils. Jennifer had mentioned his love of drawing. Michael received a science kit, and Grace got a collection of books she'd been wanting. But the gift that mattered most came from Rebecca. She pulled a small wrapped package from her bag and handed it to Timmy. "I made this myself. It took me a couple months, but I wanted it to be perfect." Timmy unwrapped it carefully, revealing a scrapbook. Inside were photographs, pictures of their family that Rebecca had somehow preserved, their parents on their wedding day, Timmy as a baby being held by his father, Rebecca and Timmy at the beach during a family vacation. Each photo was labeled with dates and captions in Rebecca's neat handwriting, and between the photos were pages of her memories written out in detail. "So we don't forget," Rebecca said quietly. "So we remember the good times, not just the sad ending." Timmy clutched the scrapbook to his chest, tears streaming down his face. Around them, the party continued, but in that moment, it was just the two of them, holding on to each other and the memories they'd almost lost. Reba quietly stepped away, giving them privacy. Jennifer found her in the hallway, wiping at her own eyes. "Thank you," Jennifer said simply. "Thank you for reminding me why this job matters, for showing these kids that they're worth someone's time and effort and care." "They are worth it," Reba replied. "Every single one of them." The party continued until 5 p.m., when Amy Patterson regretfully announced that it was time for Rebecca to head back to Bridgewater. The goodbyes were tearful, but not as devastating as they might have been. Both siblings now had hope. Hope that this wouldn't be the last visit. Hope that someone was fighting for them. Hope that someday they might be together permanently. "I'll call you tomorrow," Rebecca promised, hugging Timmy tightly. "And I'll write letters. Real letters, not just emails, okay?" "Okay. I love you, Becca. I love you too, little brother. Happy birthday." As the car pulled away, Timmy stood at the window watching until it disappeared from view. Reba came to stand beside him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "You okay?" "Yeah. It hurts to see her go, but I'm okay. Today was perfect. Thank you doesn't even begin to cover it. But thank you. You're welcome. And Timmy, this isn't goodbye. I'm going to keep working with Daniel and Michelle to arrange more visits. And when you and Rebecca are ready, when the time is right, we're going to figure out a long-term solution. I can't promise it'll be easy or fast, but I can promise I'm not giving up." Timmy looked up at her. This woman who'd entered his life just days ago, but had already changed everything. "Why? Why do you care so much?" Reba thought for a moment before answering. "Because a long time ago, I was a girl from a small town in Oklahoma who had big dreams, but not much else. People took chances on me, believed in me when they didn't have to. I've been lucky beyond measure, and I believe that luck comes with responsibility. When I have the power to make someone's life better, especially a child's life, I have an obligation to do it. You asked for an old cake, Timmy, because you thought that was all you deserved. But you deserve so much more. You deserve the world." That night, after the decorations had been taken down and the common room had returned to its usual state, Timmy lay in his bed holding the scrapbook Rebecca had made. He turned the pages slowly, studying each photograph, reading each memory she'd written down. In one entry, she'd written about a time when Timmy was 5 and had gotten lost at a shopping mall. Their father had found him crying by the food court, and their mother had held him until he stopped shaking. Rebecca had written, "We were always there for each other. We still are." Timmy closed the scrapbook and held it close, as if it were a lifeline connecting him to the family he'd lost and the sister who was still fighting for him. Outside his window, the winter night was cold and clear, stars scattered across the sky like the glow-in-the-dark stickers on his ceiling. It had been the best birthday of his life. 3 months had passed since Timmy's birthday party, and winter had fully settled over Nashville. January brought cold rains that turned the grounds of Oak Ridge into muddy puddles, and February arrived with an unusual snowstorm that blanketed the city in white. Through it all, Timmy held on to the promise Reba had made. This was not the end. but the beginning. True to her word, Reba had remained involved in Timmy's life, though not in the overwhelming, constant way he'd initially feared would fade once the excitement of the birthday wore off. Instead, she'd established a sustainable presence, visiting Oak Ridge once every 2 weeks, calling him on Wednesday evenings to check in, and working quietly behind the scenes with Daniel Foster and Michelle Torres to navigate the complex web of child welfare systems. The visits with Rebecca had become regular, if not frequent. Once a month, on a Saturday afternoon, Rebecca was transported from Bridgewater to a supervised neutral location, sometimes Oak Ridge, sometimes a community center, once even a bowling alley that Reba had rented out for a private afternoon. The visits were never long enough, always ending with tearful goodbyes, but they were lifelines for both siblings. On a cold Saturday in late February, Timmy sat in Daniel Foster's car as they drove to one of these scheduled visits. The social worker had become more than just a case manager. He'd become someone Timmy trusted, someone who genuinely seemed to care about his well-being. "How's school going?" Daniel asked as they navigated the highway traffic. "Better. My grades are up. Ms. Collins says if I keep it up, I might be able to skip ahead in math next year." "That's excellent, Timmy. Your parents would be proud." The mention of his parents still caused a familiar ache in Timmy's chest, but it was different now. Less sharp, more like a bruise that was slowly healing. The scrapbook Rebecca had made sat on his nightstand at Oak Ridge, and he looked at it most nights before sleep, remembering his parents not just in their death, but in the fullness of their lives. "Daniel, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you really think Rebecca and I will ever get to live together again? Like, actually together, not just visits?" Daniel was quiet for a moment, his hands steady on the steering wheel. He'd learned over his years as a social worker that children deserved honesty, even when the truth was complicated. "I think it's possible, but it won't be easy or quick. Rebecca turns 16 in July. When she's 18, she could potentially petition for guardianship of you. That's still more than 2 years away. In the meantime, there are other possibilities. Foster families willing to take both of you, kinship placements if any relatives change their circumstances. Michelle and I are exploring every option. What about Aunt Linda, Mom's sister in Arizona? We've reached out to her several times. Her health issues are serious. She has advanced diabetes and limited mobility. Taking care of 2 children, especially teenagers, isn't realistic for her situation. She does send cards, though, doesn't she?" Timmy nodded. His aunt had started sending cards and occasional care packages after learning about his birthday party through a Facebook post someone had made about Reba's involvement. The cards were awkward and stilted, written by someone who felt guilty but powerless. But they were something. "The important thing," Daniel continued, "is that you and Rebecca are both in stable placements right now. You're both going to therapy, doing well in school, making progress. That matters for any future decisions about placement. Courts want to see stability and growth." They arrived at the community center where today's visit would take place. It was a modest brick building that housed after-school programs and senior activities. Amy Patterson was already there with Rebecca, who was sitting on a bench outside despite the cold, clearly too excited to wait inside. The moment Timmy stepped out of the car, Rebecca rushed over and pulled him into a fierce hug. These reunions never got old, never felt routine. Each one was precious. "You're freezing," Timmy observed, feeling how cold her hands were. "I didn't care. I wanted to see you the second you arrived." They had 3 hours together. Daniel and Amy supervised from a respectful distance, close enough to meet protocol requirements, but far enough to give the siblings privacy. They played basketball in the community center's gym. Rebecca, still taller and more coordinated, but Timmy improving with every visit. They sat in the small library area and talked about everything and nothing. Rebecca's English class, where she was reading To Kill a Mockingbird. Timmy's growing friendship with Preston Wallace at Oak Ridge. Their shared memories of their parents. Doctor, Williams thinks I'm ready to start talking about the accident, Rebecca said quietly, as they sat together on a worn couch in a corner of the library. Like, really talking about it. Not just acknowledging it happened. Are you scared? Terrified? But also, I think I need to. I've been carrying around so much anger and guilt. And Dr. Williams says, until I process the trauma properly, it's going to keep affecting me. Timmy took her hand. I have nightmares still. About that night. About getting the news. Me too. Maybe we should both work on it. Even though we're in different places, we could talk about it together during our calls. I'd like that. It might help, knowing I'm not alone in it. At 2:30, halfway through their visit, Reba arrived. She told Timmy she might stop by if her schedule allowed, and seeing her walk through the community center doors made his day even brighter. She carried a large bag from a local bookstore. I come bearing gifts, she announced. New books for both of you, and some art supplies for Timmy. Also, I may have stopped by that bakery and picked up some of Patricia's famous cookies. Rebecca stood to greet her, and Reba pulled her into a warm hug. Look at you, getting taller every time I see you. How are you doing, sweetheart? I'm good. Really good, actually. Bridgewater it's helping. I'm learning how to deal with things instead of just being angry all the time. I'm proud of you. That kind of work takes real courage. They spent the next hour together, the three of them talking about school, books, music, and plans for the future. Reba shared stories from her recent tour, making them laugh with tales of mishaps and adventures on the road. She asked thoughtful questions about their lives, really listening to the answers, making both siblings feel seen and valued. I've been talking with Daniel and Michelle, Reba said, as their time began to wind down. We're working on increasing the frequency of visits. Maybe every 3 weeks instead of every 4. It's slow progress, but it's progress. Every little bit helps, Rebecca said, though Timmy could hear the frustration underneath her gratitude. She wanted what they all wanted, to be together permanently, not just for supervised visits. As 5 p.m. approached and it was time for Rebecca to return to Bridgewater, the familiar sadness settled over them. But this time, something was different. Timmy noticed that Rebecca seemed more settled, less desperate. The separation still hurt, but it no longer felt like the end of the world. 3 weeks, Rebecca said as they hugged goodbye. I can do 3 weeks, and I'll call you Tuesday and Thursday, like always. 3 weeks, Timmy agreed. I'll count down the days. After Rebecca's car had pulled away, Reba invited Timmy to get dinner with her and Daniel at a nearby diner. Over burgers and milkshakes, they talked about Timmy's progress, his goals, his dreams for the future. What do you want to be when you grow up? Reba asked, stealing one of Timmy's French fries. I don't know. I used to think, maybe a mechanic like my dad. But lately, I've been thinking about social work. Like Daniel, helping kids who are going through what I'm going through. Daniel looked genuinely moved. That would be a great path for you, Timmy. You have empathy and insight that comes from lived experience. But you've got time to figure it out. You're only 12. Almost 12 and a half, Timmy corrected with a small smile. Well, almost 12 and a half, Reba laughed. Whatever you decide to do, I know you'll be great at it. You're one of the strongest, most resilient kids I've ever met. I don't feel strong. Most days I feel like I'm barely holding it together. That's exactly what strength is, honey. It's not about never struggling. It's about getting up every day and trying again even when everything feels impossible. You and Rebecca both have that. As Daniel drove Timmy back to Oak Ridge that evening, the 12-year-old stared out the window at the passing lights of Nashville. The city felt different to him now than it had 3 months ago. It felt less hostile, more full of possibility. Back at Oak Ridge, he found the common room full of the usual Saturday evening activity. Emma was playing with dolls in the corner. Caleb and Preston were engaged in an intense video game battle. And Ashley sat by the window with her ever-present book. Jennifer was reviewing paperwork at a small desk, her reading glasses perched on her nose. "Good visit?" Jennifer asked as Timmy walked in. "Really good. Reba came by. I heard. She texted me to say she'd drop off some additional supplies tomorrow. That woman is a force of nature." Timmy went to his room and pulled out the new sketchbook Reba had brought him. He sat on his bed and began to draw, something he'd been doing more frequently in recent weeks. His therapist, Dr. Marcus, whom Reba had helped Oak Ridge bring on part-time, had suggested art as a way to process emotions that were too big for words. He drew his family, his parents, Rebecca, and himself, not as they'd been frozen in photographs, but as he remembered them in moments of joy. His father teaching him to throw a baseball, his mother singing while she cooked dinner, Rebecca braiding his hair when he was small, even though he'd protested. The drawings weren't perfect, but they were honest. Over the following weeks, life settled into a new rhythm. Timmy attended his weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Marcus, slowly working through the trauma of losing his parents. He helped Emma adjust to life at Oak Ridge, becoming a sort of protective older brother to the shy 7-year-old. His grades continued to improve, and he even joined a school art club that met twice a week. Reba's visits remained consistent. She never made promises she couldn't keep, never offered false hope, but her steady presence was a form of promise itself. She was there, and she wasn't leaving. In March, Daniel called a meeting with Timmy, Jennifer, and Reba to discuss future plans. They gathered in Jennifer's office on a rainy Wednesday afternoon. "I want to be transparent about where things stand," Daniel began, pulling out several folders. "Michelle Torres and I have been coordinating closely on the Hayes siblings case. We've explored multiple options for reunification." Timmy's heart raced. This was the conversation he'd been both hoping for and dreading. "The most likely scenario remains Rebecca petitioning for guardianship when she turns 18, Daniel continued. "That's 2.5 years away. In the meantime, we're going to continue the current arrangement, regular visits, increased phone contact, and both children remaining in therapeutic care." "What about foster placement?" Reba asked. "Are there families willing to take both children?" "We have some potential families, but there are complications. Rebecca's age makes joint placement challenging. Many foster families are hesitant to take teenagers, especially with her documented behavioral history, even though she's made tremendous progress. And any placement would need to be willing to maintain both children's therapeutic relationships and school placements." Timmy felt his hope deflating slightly, but Daniel held up a hand. "However, I'm not saying it's impossible. We're going to keep looking. And in the meantime, we're working with the courts to establish a more formal visitation arrangement that recognizes the siblings' bond and makes visits a right rather than a privilege that can be easily disrupted." "What can I do to help?" Reba asked directly. "Keep doing exactly what you're doing. Your involvement has been invaluable. Not just the financial support, though that matters, but the emotional support. You've given these kids something to hold on to, someone outside the system who cares about them. That's powerful." Jennifer nodded in agreement. Timmy's been a different child since December. More engaged, more hopeful. He's helping other kids at Oak Ridge, showing leadership. That's all because he feels valued and supported. Timmy looked at the 3 adults who'd come together to advocate for him and Rebecca. His caseworker, his facility coordinator, and a country music star who could have walked away after one good deed but had chosen to stay. It wasn't the family he'd lost, but it was a network of people who cared. And that was something. "Can I say something?" Timmy asked quietly. "Of course," Daniel encouraged. 3 months ago, I asked for an old cake because I thought that was all I deserved. I thought I was invisible, that nobody cared if I existed or not. But you showed me I was wrong. I'm not saying everything is perfect now. I still miss my parents every day. I still wish Rebecca and I could be together. But I'm not invisible anymore. And I'm starting to believe that maybe, eventually, things can be okay. Not the same as before, but okay in a new way." Reba's eyes glistened with tears. "Timmy, you were never invisible. You just needed someone to see you. And now that we do, we're not looking away." The meeting ended with a clear plan. Continue therapy, maintain visits, keep searching for long-term solutions, and support both children in their current placements while working toward reunification. It wasn't the dramatic, immediate resolution Timmy had hoped for, but it was real and honest and achievable. As spring began to break through the last of winter's cold, Timmy found himself thinking about seeds. They'd studied plant growth in science class, learning about how seeds needed time in darkness and cold before they could germinate and grow. His teacher had called it stratification, a necessary process that seemed cruel but was actually essential for future growth. Maybe that's what this time was, Timmy thought. Stratification. The hard, cold period that would eventually lead to something growing and beautiful. On a warm April afternoon, Timmy sat outside Oak Ridge with Emma, teaching her to draw flowers. She was frustrated with her attempts, ready to give up. "It's okay if it's not perfect," Timmy told her gently. "Art isn't about being perfect. It's about expressing what you feel. Show me how flowers make you feel, not what they look like." Emma thought about this, then drew wild, colorful scribbles that somehow captured joy better than any realistic rendering could have. Timmy praised her work sincerely, and Emma beamed with pride. Inside, through the window, Reba watched this interaction. She'd stopped by for an unscheduled visit, wanting to check on some of the other children at Oak Ridge. Seeing Timmy mentoring Emma, passing on the compassion he'd received, made every effort worthwhile. Jennifer came to stand beside her. "You changed that boy's life." "No," Reba said softly. "I just reminded him that his life was worth changing. He's doing the real work. Still, what you've done. I've been in this field for a decade, and I've never seen anything quite like it. One person deciding to care, really care, about a child they had no obligation to help. But that's where you're wrong," Reba countered gently. "I do have an obligation. We all do. Every adult has an obligation to care for children, especially the vulnerable ones. We've just forgotten that somewhere along the way, convinced ourselves that it's someone else's job. But it's everyone's job." That evening, as Timmy lay in bed at Oak Ridge, he thought about everything that had changed since that December afternoon in the grocery store. He thought about his parents, hoping they somehow knew he was okay. He thought about Rebecca, counting down days until their next visit. He thought about Reba, Daniel, Jennifer, Dr. Marcus, and all the people who'd formed a safety net around him and his sister. The road ahead was still uncertain. There were no guarantees, no promises of perfect endings. But there was hope. Real, solid hope, built on genuine caring and consistent effort. And maybe, Timmy thought as sleep began to claim him, hope was enough. In the darkness of the dormitory, he whispered to himself, "Happy birthday to me. Happy rebirth." Because that's what the past 4 months had been. Not a miracle, not a fantasy rescue, but a slow, realistic rebirth. learning to live again, to hope again, to trust that he mattered in a world that had tried to teach him otherwise. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be hard days ahead, setbacks and disappointments. But tonight, Timmy Hayes fell asleep, holding on to something precious. The knowledge that he wasn't alone, that he was seen and valued, and that somewhere out there, people were fighting for him and his sister. It wasn't the ending to his story. It was barely the beginning. But it was a start, and sometimes a start is everything.